Fallacies or mga kamalian. Meaning of fallacy. In general, logicians take fallacy as an error in reasoning or in argument. They refuse to consider fallacy as an error or mistake in judgment. To them, a fallacy is committed not because the arguer committed a mistake in his/her judgment, but because the arguer committed a mistake in reasoning. A mistake in reasoning will lead the arguer to draw a false judgment. The term fallacy is derived from the Latin infinitive polare, which means to deceive or appear false or deceptive. This etymological definition makes logicians provide a delineating line between sophism and fallacy. It is sophism if the mistake in reasoning is unintentional, it is deemed a fallacy. A fallacy is a defect in an argument that involves mistaken reasoning. Sometimes fallacies are committed purposefully to influence or mislead the reader or listener. A formal fallacy is one that can be detected by examining the form of an argument. Kinds of fallacies. There is hardly any universally acceptable classification of fallacies. Hence, only the most common types shall be discussed in this volume. But first, briefly the formal and informal fallacies be discussed. Example of argument from fallacy. Example, your argument for the existence of God is fallacious, therefore God is not real. Definition, this fallacy occurs when someone argues that the conclusion of an argument must be false because the argument made for it contains a logically fallacy. Shahana Manguning Gepar, your first reporter for Module 9 Fallacies.
Good day, ma'am, and good day, classmates. My report is all about fallacies from the standpoint of language or linguistic fallacies. Some textbooks of logic call fallacies of language as fallacies of clarity or fallacies of ambiguity. These fallacies occur in argument formulated with words whose meanings shift and change in the course of the argument. In a larger scope, the use of words whose meaning are not maintained in the whole course of the argument, which leads to ambiguity of the meaning of the argument, which leads further ambiguity, the misuse of the language. This is the reason why these fallacies are called linguistic fallacies. There are 5 types of fallacies from the standpoint of language. Number 1 is equivocational. This is a fallacy that employs vague terms or those used in an equivocal manner in the course of the argument of syllogism. For example, all atheists are separated from God. All sinners are separated from God. All sinners are atheists. This argument uses the phrase separated from God in 2 different senses. The meaning of the words separated from God is clear, that one is dissociated from bliss, graces, and blessings of God. Number 2 is amphiboly. This kind of fallacy arises from a defect in grammatical construction. Example, while standing on his hind legs, the physical instructor played with his dog. This argument is fallacious because of the defect in the grammatical construction or its faulty syntax. Number 3, accent. This fallacy arises due to the difference in interpretation brought about the misplaced emphasis on a phrase, word, or syllable and proposition. For example, you may laugh as you like, meaning other may not laugh. You may laugh as you like, meaning you are prohibited from laughing. You may laugh as you like, meaning it is permissible that you laugh or do not laugh. In the fallacy of accent, the misplaced emphasis takes the phrase, word, or syllable out of context or of proper relation with the rest of the proposition. Number four is division. This fallacy arises when an argument takes what is true of the whole to be also true of its part, or when an argument takes the attributes of a collection of elements as the attributes of the elements themselves. For example, X university is vital to Christian education. Mr. Y is the professor of X university. Mr. X is vital to Christian education. Number five, composition. This kind of fallacy arises when an argument proceeds to take the attributes of the part of the whole to be the same attributes of the whole itself. For example, those who stop the 1999 bar exam are the various law schools in Manila. Those who say Jose of USC Cebu is a 1999 bar exam top-notcher. Jose of USC Cebu is from the various law schools in Manila. That's all. Thank you po.
Hello everyone, I'm Anissa S. Jainuddin. I will continue to report the fallacies of relevance. Fallacies from the standpoint of relevance. Fallacies of relevance occur in arguments whose premises are logically irrelevant so that their conclusion cannot be established. Such fallacies are also called fallacies of unwarranted assumption and fallacies of insufficient evidence, among others. Ang mga kamalian ng kaugnayan, halimbawa, ay malinaw na bigo upang magbigay ng sapat na dahilan para maniwala sa katotohanan ng kanilang mga konklusyon. The first example of standpoint of relevance, circular argument, beginning the question. In Latin, circular argument or the fallacy of arguing in a circle is called batitio principe. This fallacious argument arises when a proposition is argued as true because it is true. In other words, in petitio principe, the premises assume the truth of the conclusion without providing evidence to the truth or validity of the conclusion. Ang mga bahagi ng isang pabilog na argumento ay kadalasang lohikal na wasto dahil kung ang premises ay totoo, ang konklusyon ay dapat na totoo. Second is complex question. The fallacy is called primarum interrogationem in Latin. It arises when the question raised first possesses an answer to another question which is not raised. Ang isang komplikadong tanong ay kwalipikado bilang isang argumento at sa makatuwid bilang isang maling argumento dahil lamang sa ilang konklusyon ay nakuha mula sa kawalan ng kakayahan ng kalaban na sagutin ang tanong. Third is repeated assertion. This is a kind of fallacies that arises when one believes that if one tells a big lie and this lie is told often enough, people will come to believe that such lie is the truth. Ang patunay sa pamamagitan na paulit-ulit na paninindigan ay isa sa maraming mga smokescreen na ginagamit upang masakop ang katotohanan na ang pangangatwiran ay batay sa isa sa tatlo kamalian ng trilema ni Agrippa. The fourth is accident. In metaphysics, science of being as being, there is a distinction between substance and accident. The former refers to the being that exists in itself. It is independent of something else in terms of its existence. Ang kamalian ng aksidente ay isang informal na kamalian at isang deduktibong balido ngunit hindi wastong argumento na nagaganap sa isang statistical na syllogism kapag ang isang nagbubukod sa isang tuntunin ng hinlalaki ay hindi pinansin. 5 is converse accident. This fallacies is the reverse of the fallacies of accident. Here, special or particular cases or circumstances are applied to generally rules. It is fallacious because what is true of one is not necessarily true of all. Ang fallacy ng converse accidents ay isang informal na kamalian na maaaring mangyari sa isang statistical syllogism kapag ang isang panuntunan na nilalapat lamang sa isang pambihirang kaso ay maling nilalapat sa lahat ng mga kaso sa pangkalahatan. 6 is tokokwe. The so-called two wrongs make a right. Fallacies arises when one answers a charge of wrongdoing by a similar charge to his opponent. Ang totokwe ay isang diskarte sa talakayan na naglalayong siraan ang argumento ng kalaban sa pamamagitan ng pag-atake sa sariling personal na pag-uugali at kilos ng kalaban bilang hindi naaayon sa kanilang argumento, kaya inaakusahan ang pagkukunwari. 7 is false cause. The fallacy of false cause arises when one assigns as the cause those facts that merely precede or accompany the effect. Ang false cause ay isang uri ng informal na kamalian o isang mapanghikayat na pamamaraan kung saan ang temporal na pagkasunod-sunod ng mga pangyayari ay ipinapalagay na sanhi ng pagkasunod-sunod ng mga pangyayari. So far, thank you for watching.
Non-sequitur. This is commonly called as the fallacy of "it does not follow." It arises in an argument where the conclusion categorically or completely lacks connection to the proposition. For example, as a student of Catholic University, I will become an Al-Qaeda member. Enchiloxin is a philosophy student. Therefore, I'm convinced that she will become an astronaut. Pedro Pascual is handsome. Therefore, he is good in cooking. The next set of fallacies are traditionally known as classifications of ignoratio elenchi, or ignorance of what is required to refute or establish a conclusion. They are argumentum ad hominem, argumentum ad ignorantiam, argumentum ad verecundiam, argumentum ad papillum, argumentum ad misericordiam, and argumentum ad baculum. Ignoratio elenchi is commonly called the fallacy of irrelevant proof or the fallacy of ignoring the question. Fallacies of this kind arise when the premises used in the argument are irrelevant to the conclusion. Argumentum ad hominem. This fallacy is committed when the real claims or issues of an argument are ignored and the character, personality, or belief of the opponent is emphasized, and this is the reason why it is also called an argument against the man. In argumentum ad hominem, it is the person who presents the argument who is being attacked and not the argument presented. Take this example where the lawyer of the prosecution during the hearing of a criminal case commits this fallacy. Your Honor, it will be very difficult for us not to believe that the accused of this murder case is not guilty, because the father and grandfather of the accused had been convicted of murder several years ago, and besides, the accused is of bad moral reputation. Argumentum ad ignorantiam. This fallacy, also called the fallacy of appeal to ignorance, arises when an argument is taken true just because it has not been proven as false, or when an argument is taken as false because it has not been proven as true. For example, the existence of purgatory must be true because nobody has ever successfully defended that it is just a product of imagination. The existence of Cyan, so-called Pinoy Kangaro, must be false because nobody has proven its real existence. Argumentum ad verecundiam. This fallacious argument arises when one who has difficulty in confronting or understanding complicated questions seeks refuge to the ideas, concepts, principles, or judgment of a person who enjoy a reputation of an expert or an authority on the matter at hand. Argumentum ad verecundiam is also known as the fallacy of appeal to our modesty, respect, or authority. Consider this example. Anybody who used condom during sexual intercourse will surely go to hell, according to Cardinal X. Filipinos are poor because they are lazy, according to American Senator A. Argumentum ad populum. This is also called the fallacy of appeal to the people. It arises when one, instead of concreting on or giving more emphasis to the relevant facts of the argument, gives more emphasis to the emotions and opinion of the crowd or of the multitude as basis of his conclusion. The conclusion of a fallacious argument of this kind is based on the proposition this must be true because most, if not all, people believe that it is true. Obviously, an argument can be believed by many people, though it may not be true. For example, all earthlings believe that the earth is flat. This belief will not make the earth flat. Buy this brand X detergent bar because most Bisayans use this. This does not mean that brand X detergent bar is really good. Save the drug user and incarcerate the drug dealer. This does not assure the drug user that he will not be prosecuted for the crime of drug possession when he and she gets caught. Argumentum ad misericordiam. This is the fallacy of appeal to pity. Such a fallacious argument arises when an appeal to evidence is replaced by an appeal to pity, mercy, or sympathy. For example, Bart cannot be given a failing mark in the bar exams this year because he had taken the state exams for 9 times already. The accused in a robbery case must not be put to jail because he is the father of 12 children and a husband of a woman who is suffering from cancer. Argumentum ad baculum. This fallacy, also known as appeal to might and appeal to force, arises when one appeals to intimidation or the use of force in order to gain acceptance of his or her propositions. For example, President of a state to its citizens: commit heinous crimes and you will surely be sent to the maximum security national penitentiary. Father to his children: if you will not be serious with your studies, your future will be bleak and you can never expect me to lift a finger for help.
Group 7 Reporters.